My name is Zoe Stuffridge and I chose the AS print brief. My intended audience for my product is males and females category 18 to 24. For my media product, I follow typical conventions of the indie genre to ensure I was appealing to the right audience. To understand the typical genre conventions, I studied a range of different indie music magazine covers and how the star vehicle is presented and applied these to my own work. I looked at Q and Indie in particular because it seemed as if they were the most popular and successful magazines in this genre, and therefore researching their codes and conventions would give my own magazine success and popularity. I think my double-page spread challenges conventions as I have used a rabbit head on my female model to make my media product appear more unique and interesting to appeal to the audience. The pink filter is an additional feature of excitement and draws more attention to the rabbit head, as well as making the masthead stand out. Magazines such as NME and Q usually use a white background and black text for their double-page spread to represent professionalism and sophistication to their audience. The star vehicle they use will typically be positioned on the left-hand side of the page, with the masthead above the paragraphs of text in a bold font with capital letters to gain attention from the audience. I reversed this convention by using a white text with a black background, which will hopefully appeal to the audience because this colour choice makes the text easier to read. For my front cover, contents page and double page spread, I researched indie music magazines and the layout of their products. I applied the same layout convention to all my work to make sure it looked professional and to appeal to my audience. With my front page, I made sure that my camera work followed conventions such as a close-up of a student wearing indie clothing looking directly at the camera with a neutral facial expression. I used a white background to follow conventions and connote high production values. In terms of the layout, the name of my magazine is usually positioned at the top of the page in a large bold font to gain the audience's attention. This follows the conventions created by NME and Q magazine. The cover lines are typically located down one side of the page and they don't give too much information about the featured articles. Instead, they include the names of famous music artists to appeal to their audience and gain their interest. The typography is in capital letters to attract attention and make the cover stand out more. The most frequent colours that appear throughout the front covers I looked at were black, white and red. In my first several drafts, I applied these colours to my front cover, but later changed the red text to a bluey-green type colour as it proved too difficult to read. My front cover follows the typical convention of a close-up shot of a star vehicle being used to give the sense of a personal connection between the audience and the celebrity. These types of camera shots are also used in NME and Q magazine. With contents page conventions, similar colours are used to the front cover, with white typically being used as the background with black text as a colour contrast. The layout convention is structured with no overlapping and dividers to separate the categories. The word content is typically positioned at the top of the page, usually in capital letters to stand out and emphasise the name of the magazine. Subheadings are often used in some contents pages, but not frequently enough to class it as a convention. There are usually 3 or 4 images positioned all around the contents page, with a main image in the top centre. I applied these conventions to my own contents page to make sure it looked professional. The colour palette I used was a wide variety of colours, but I tried to continue the house style throughout my pages by including the green colour used in my masthead. This will hopefully reinforce familiarity within the audience and they'll recognise my magazine just from seeing the masthead repeated. On the other hand, my media product challenged conventions of real media products because the majority of indie music magazine covers use an individual male star vehicle for an entirely male indie band. I disrupted this convention by including a female star vehicle throughout my magazine. I did this because I wanted to make a change from the usual norm of seeing almost every indie cover featuring at least one male artist on every issue. However, it is not uncommon for a female to be featured on an indie music magazine front cover, but they are often presented in a slightly sexualised way to appeal to male audience members of the target audience. This convention is appropriate to Laura Mulvey's theory in 1975, which states that females are sexualised and portrayed as objects of desire for men. It can be argued that my female star vehicle is being presented in a slightly sexualised manner because of the positioning of her hand, which draws the audience's attention to her lips. I also followed conventions I observed on NME and Q regarding Lexis and typography choices. I had seen in my research that both these popular professional magazines use Lexis from the semantic field of indie to connote the genre to the target audience in a modern, stylish, clear font that was suitable for a modern, unisex audience aged 15 to 30 years old. I followed this convention by using phrases like The Killers tour exclusive on my covers teasers and See them live in Paris on my content page. I also followed Lexis and narrative conventions on my double-page spreads, as my article is a written interview about my featured artist, which follows conventions I research in articles in double-page spreads in Q Magazine and NME because they also include written interviews. I am confident that my representation is accurate to the indie genre because I have researched many different indie magazines to give me an understanding on how representation works. My camera work consists of my female star vehicles looking directly at the camera to make the audience feel more personally involved with my magazine. Giving the audience a sense of a personal connection to my magazine is important in order to increase its amount of interest and appeal. You could argue that my magazine cover supports Stanley Hall's theory because my female model has a facial expression that could connote a state of depression. However, this is not something I wanted to express in my work, as I was aiming more towards Oscar B's theory of teenagers being a mixed metaphor, both trouble and fun. I wanted to do this to present a slight hint of rebellion through my media product, which will appeal to the audience because it suggests excitement and adventure. My media product unintentionally supports Sarita Malik's theory of multiculturalism not being represented in the British media. It was not my intention to show support for this theory, and I considered including a black or Asian person to be my model. However, I thought that because my female character was going to be slightly sexualised, this might increase the negativity some people have for these ethnic groups, which is not something I want to reinforce. My media product supports Andy Medhurst's theory of not being able to see sexuality, because although Amber is heterosexual, you have no way of knowing this just by looking at my magazine. It didn't matter to me whether I used a heterosexual or homosexual person throughout my magazine, because as Medhurst stated, you have no way of knowing a person's sexuality unless they choose to tell you. This is also something I didn't want my audience to focus on, as I wanted their attention to be drawn to the appearance and content my magazine has to offer. Regardless of this, I believe it's important for diversity to be present among magazines, and for the LGBT community to be represented fairly and equally. My magazine cover supports Higson's theory because although I haven't used a visually patriotic representation, all of the bands and artists featured on my cover are of a British nationality. This shows why it is important for my audience to be preferably British, although this is not essential. I would choose Anthem Publishing for my media product because they publish a variety of different music magazines that target similar audiences to mine. To provide evidence of their success, Anthem Publishing is Britain's fastest growing major publisher. In the past year, their sales have grown by 31%. Newsletter subscribers have increased by 36%, and social media engagement is up by 310%. They also appeal to their audience by giving them special offers and discounts. One example of this was in January 2017, where a 50% off discount was offered on all magazines for a limited time. This media institution gained my appeal in the way they attracted both genders, which is also something I wanted to achieve in my media product. I would prefer an internet-based company to distribute my media product because of the increasing amount of revenue different media platforms are continuing to attract. New technologies made it possible to view magazines digitally across a variety of platforms and consoles, and it has been suggested that print magazines and newspapers will die out and digital replacements will take over. My magazine would fit into Anthem's publishing portfolio of brands, as they have not yet created an indie music magazine. Their most popular music magazines are classic pop and vintage rock, which shows my magazine would be a good fit amongst these popular music titles. If I were to create a magazine distribution company, I'd be sure to publish a wide variety of magazines to appeal to a wide range of audiences, thus gaining profit and prestige. My intended audience is males and females categorised in social classes C1 to D, aged 17 to 24. I wanted my main focus to be on social classes C1 and C2, with the exclusion of the E-class, as they are not likely to have a disposable income high enough to purchase my magazine on a regular basis. I didn't want to focus on the A and B classes as they will expect a glossy magazine with high production values, featuring A-list celebrities professionally photographed. This was not achievable for me as I didn't have the materials or the equipment to make my magazine look as professional as a magazine like Vogue or Q magazine. I have based the age, gender and social classes for the primary target audience on the feedback I received from my survey. Every responder to my survey was female, but I tried to appeal to both genders in order to gain more profit and prestige. This also follows typical genre conventions because the majority of indie music magazines use content that will attract both males and females. The respondents to my survey were all of a similar age, which helped decide the age range for my audience. It would be preferable if my audience were British because this relates to the nationality of the indie artists I am including, although I'm hoping my magazine appeals to all nationalities. I chose to have these social classes in my audience because I thought I'd be able to appeal to these classes the most successfully through the uses of image, colour and content. In terms of psychographics, my audience would be categorised as explorers, people driven by discovery and always ready to try new experiences. My audience can also be seen as aspirers because they can be materialistic and are often attracted to how something looks, rather than what it has to offer. In spite of this, content is also important to them, just as not as much as appearance. Constructing my media product has allowed me to experiment with more technologies, such as Photoshop and InDesign, as I was required to use a range of different tools when creating my media product. Photoshop was the most important technology platform when creating my media product and editing my original images. I found that Photoshop was the easiest and most effective platform when editing my images, as it had a range of tools that allowed me to adjust the brightness, saturation and levels for each of my images, which was essential for my media product because some of my images were too bright. I could then adjust the layout in InDesign. In addition, I also used Word when writing the article for my double-page spread because this allowed me access to spell check in case I made any grammatical errors. I was cautious of this in fear of spelling mistakes making my media product appear unprofessional. I've also learned a variety of platforms can be used to present a collection of images in a variety of different ways. My knowledge on digital cameras has improved as we are required to use the Canon 6D to take photographs for our magazines. Using the studio helped me realise how to set up the lighting and the background independently. This made me realise how lighting can affect the quality of an image in a positive or negative way, depending on the outcome. Using Photoshop to edit my images allowed me to use the Move and Crop tool, as well as adjusting the brightness levels. I experimented with adjusting the brightness for my first few photo shoots, as the images were too dark, but fortunately with my latest photo shoot, the lighting was significantly better. Creating and publishing work on Blogger was unfamiliar to me, as I had never used or heard of the website before. I gradually became used to it as the main task progressed, and now feel comfortable enough to use it for any purpose. Being able to use Blogger to publish my work online, and to a lesser extent YouTube for this evaluation, has shown me how Gauntlet's 2008 theory that new media technologies has eroded the boundaries between producers and consumers of media texts is true even at my level, because I have in effect become a producer of a media text that a real audience could see the minute I publish my work online. My knowledge of SurveyMonkey has improved, and I also feel more confident creating surveys, which is useful during this production as it has allowed me to tailor my media language properly to represent what my audience actually asked for. Progressing from the prelim task to my main task has helped me understand more about genre codes and conventions while simultaneously applying them to my own media product. With the prelim task, I was uncertain on how to appropriately appeal to my target audience through the use of colour, style and structure. Looking at a range of different magazine styles for my music genre has helped me establish a house style and structure for my own media product. I have also learned how important it is to have high quality images throughout my magazine in order to give the magazine a more professional appearance. I applied this newly discovered knowledge to my own work, thus ensuring I was targeting the right audience and social groups. My capability of technology has improved greatly, and my knowledge on image adjustment has also improved. Adjusting my images gave my media product a more professional appearance, which will appeal more to the audience while simultaneously connoting high production values. Looking back at my prelim task has helped me to realise to not use bright colours, especially as a background, as this makes the text difficult to read. Additionally, it makes the overall appearance look quite childish, thus not appealing to the correct audience. However, for both my prelim task and my main task, I followed common conventions concerning my female model, as I considered the lighting, clothing and facial expressions on all occasions. However, the quality of my images was not as good as I felt I was capable of, so I redid my photo shoot using a rabbit head borrowed from the media department. This gave my media product more uniqueness and originality, and the inclusion of a pink filter throughout my photos made my images more exciting than my original photo shoot. My media product has been altered significantly since the beginning of the main task to improve the quality of my work and appeal more to my audience. This has helped me to develop my understanding on genre codes and conventions, and has improved my capability on platforms such as Photoshop.